You've been thinking about changing your life for months, maybe years, and nothing has changed. In early 19th century Germany, Goethe was already the most celebrated writer in Europe. Rulers wanted his company. Philosophers wrote letters begging for his attention. Young artists traveled weeks on foot just to stand in the same room as him. By every measure, he had earned the right to sit back and reflect on what he'd accomplished. Instead, at 82 years old, he was still waking before dawn to work, still starting new projects, still finishing things, and when people asked him the secret, his answer was so simple they usually assumed they misunderstood him. He said, "Begin." Back in his era, the educated class had a word for the ideal life. They called it deep contemplation. The highest form of human existence was believed to be sitting with ideas, examining them from every angle, waiting until your thinking was refined enough to act. You prepared thoroughly. You planned carefully. Action was the last step, something you arrived at only after everything was perfectly clear in your mind. It sounded wise. It produced a lot of beautifully written journals and very few finished lives. We call it analysis paralysis now, or overthinking, or waiting until you're ready. Same trap, different century. Sound familiar? So what did Goethe actually understand that all those careful thinkers missed? He didn't stumble into this accidentally. He lived it in a way that was almost embarrassing in its productivity. Poetry, novels, plays, scientific research on plant biology, color theory, government administration for the Duke of Weimar. Not as separate phases of a tidy life, but simultaneously, constantly, often in the middle of personal chaos. His most famous novel, The Sorrows of Young Werther, was written in about 4 weeks. He was 24. He was processing a genuine emotional crisis while writing it. He didn't wait until the pain resolved to write about pain. He wrote his way through it. That detail matters more than people realize. Because the assumption underneath most procrastination is that clarity comes first and action comes second. You figure out what you want, what you believe, who you are, and then you go do the thing. Goethe spent his entire life demonstrating that this is backwards. He wrote something in his later years that people have been quoting ever since, often without understanding what he was actually saying. The line is, "Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it." Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Most people read that as motivational decoration, something you put on a poster. But watch what he's actually claiming. He's not saying boldness feels good. He's not saying starting is brave. He's saying that the act of beginning releases something that didn't exist before you. Started, genius, power, magic. These things are not available to you while you're sitting still, waiting to feel ready. They appear after you move. This is where it stops being poetic and starts being almost mechanical. When you think about doing something without doing it, your brain operates in a kind of simulation mode. You're modeling outcomes, running scenarios, predicting what might go wrong. That process feels like preparation, but it's actually just prediction. And predictions about things you've even never done are almost always wrong in ways you can't anticipate from the inside. The moment you actually start, you get access to real information. The thing you were most afraid of often turns out to be manageable. The obstacle you never predicted turns out to be the actual problem. The version of yourself that shows up when you're redoing the thing is different from the version sitting in a chair, imagining doing the thing. Goethe understood this not as philosophy but as lived experience. He started things before he knew how to finish them. He published work that wasn't fully formed yet because he grasped that the response to imperfect, real work teaches you more than another month of private refinement. Notice the specific courage that requires. Not the courage to be excellent, The courage to be visible before you're excellent. That's the version most people never get to. Now, look at your own life honestly. There is almost certainly something you've been getting ready to do for longer than makes sense. Start the business. Have the conversation. Make the shift in career or relationship or health. You have reasons for the delay. Some of them are even valid. But underneath the valid reasons, if you press on it, there's usually something else. A belief that you need more time, more knowledge, more certainty, before you have earned the right to begin. Goethe would find that belief interesting in the same way a doctor finds a symptom interesting, not judgmentally, but as information about what's actually going on. What you're really waiting for isn't readiness, it's permission. You're waiting for some internal signal that will tell you the risk has been eliminated, that failure has been made impossible, that the path is clear enough to walk without stumbling. That signal does not come. It has never come for anyone. The people you look at and think they just knew what to do did not know. They started uncertain, and the starting made them less uncertain. Here's the practical shape of what Goethe's principle actually looks like. You pick the smallest version of the thing you keep not starting. Not the full thing, not the finished version. The smallest real piece of it that you could actually do today. And you do that, not because it will feel amazing. It probably won't, not because it will immediately create clarity about everything else. It might create more questions. You do it because the you who has done the thing is a different, more informed person than the you who only thought about doing the thing. And you need that information. You cannot think your way into having it. It is only available on the other side of the action. This is what the contemplative tradition missed, and what Goethe kept pointing at his entire career. Reflection is valuable. But reflection on actual experience is an entirely different tool than reflection on imagined experience. You can sit with an idea for a decade and still know less about it than someone who tried the thing for a week and failed. Failure is actually the mechanism here. Not failure as a motivational concept, not fail forward as a phrase you've heard before. Actual failure, which gives you real data about the gap between your model of how something works and how it actually works. Goethe failed constantly. He started projects he abandoned. He pursued scientific theories that turned out to be wrong. He made personal decisions that cost him years of stability, and he kept moving because he understood that the cost of those failures was paid in experience, while the cost of never starting at all was paid in a life that never fully happened. At 82, still working before dawn, he wasn't driven by ambition in the way younger people sometimes imagined. He wasn't trying to prove something. He kept moving because movement was how he thought, how he understood himself and the world. Sitting still wasn't rest for him. It was a kind of slow disappearance. You don't have to be Goethe. The scale doesn't matter. The thing you've been waiting to feel ready for is waiting for you to stop waiting for it. The clarity you want is on the other side of the action you keep postponing. Not before it, after. He spent 82 years proving that. The question he'd ask you is not whether you're ready. It's what you're doing tomorrow morning. If this landed, subscribe. The next one is about why he believed most people never finish what they start, and what he did about it.